Hey, it's Jeff Timborello. I'm the director of the Southwest Florida REIA. I am here with Paul Dworkian, who is our Google God from the last meeting. I'm pretty good with this stuff, and I was taking a lot of notes at the last meeting. First, Paul, thank you so much for speaking at the last meeting. I think you dropped a lot of knowledge, and we're pretty excited that you're speaking at our luncheon coming up tomorrow. How you doing today, Paul?
Doing great. I was very happy to share that info. I always find that people kind of have all these aha moments or, brain kind of explodes. Hey, I didn't know this is how all this stuff worked. It's pretty simple, common sense stuff when you think about it, but it's just so hard to understand what I should be doing with all the information that's out there. What really matters to a local business
Mm-hmm.
is kind of what I got into, I think.
I learned when I was sharing that page I was working on with you, I had no idea to keyword stuff the image meta tags, not the
Right. Well,
the alt tags.
right. So you got the alt tag, which is the text that's meant to explain to a vision impaired person what the image is of. And when you say keyword stuff, there was a time where people would just put strings of keywords separated by commas in those. But the middle ground that Google's happy with is if you just explain what's in the picture and then work in the keyword once in there. And then the other thing we talked about was even just putting the keyword in the image name itself, rather than just letting your camera name it DCM002, which has no meaning to Google or anybody else.
Yeah, no, that was honestly, I had only ever put the keyword in there because that's what Yoast says to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yoast wants to see the keyword in there when you're getting the green light on a, because the whole thing with a web page or a blog post is, well, if you've got the Yoast thing, you got to get it green.
Right.
And but yeah, I'd never thought of that. So now it's another 5 minutes a page now to figure out what to say without sounding silly. But that was awesome. So what did you learn? Did you get any questions asked that actually kind of challenged what you thought?
No, I'm used to getting all those same typical questions, so I wouldn't say anything there. It just, I dropped a lot of information, but there's certainly a lot of depth to each and every one of the different things that I talked about. And just even setting up the Google My Business page, which we talked about, was for a business that's just starting out, hasn't been on, just hasn't had any presence before ever. It's easy to set up a Google My Business page. It's when you've been around for a while, you got multiple versions of it sitting out there, and then you got to try and get Google to combine them together, and then you have reviews on different ones, and you want to make sure you preserve all those. So that stuff can kind of be a big pain, but it's all about patience and persistence. So long as you're persistent and patient with the process, it will take some time. It's worth it in the end to do some of these things.
Yeah, we're on my brokerage side of the business. We have gotten one lady we did 3 transactions with that was on purely a result of we had 45 Google reviews, mostly positive, and my nearest competitor had 2, and they all had the same last name as the broker.
You can actually report that. That's one thing. That's another strategy on that checklist I shared with you is go after your competition's rule breaking, because Google has a set of rules, and if you point out to them that your competition's breaking those rules, they'll take those reviews away, shut down their Google My Business. I used to, for some of my SEO clients, one of them was a financial firm, financial planning firm. And what we did is we went through the entire Chicago area looking in neighborhoods on Google Maps in the satellite view. And if anything was a listing in an actual neighborhood was residential, we reported it as does not exist, because according to Google's rules, you're not allowed to do that. And that allowed my client to shoot up to the top fairly quickly in a lot of markets outside of their central, what they call the centroid of the town that they're in,
Mm-hmm.
allowed to shoot up with a lot of surrounding neighborhoods as a result.
That would actually affect, say you're a real estate broker. There's a lot of people that legally have their business in their home.
Exactly. But Google doesn't want you to use your home address, as we talked about at the last lunch. So that's another way. You can just sit there and go through Google Maps looking for businesses that aren't where they should be.
So maybe that's the you hire a VA and maybe googlenuke.com or something, and just people can pay you to do it.
Hey,
Would you call that black hat? I don't think so. I guess if you're enforcing the rules, it's not black hat.
I would call it gray. I mean, yeah, I always am a proponent of, doing something that's positive for yourself rather than trying to tear other people down.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, I look at this particular item as forcing other people to play by the same rules that you have to play by. So you're basically leveling the playing field. Hey, if you're going to have a listing on Google Maps, you got to have it at a physical address that's commercially available that people can walk in at any time, and it has the sign on the door. And you have to play by those rules, and it's not fair when other people don't.
They emailed me, mailed me beacons. So I've got in my my office, I've got 3 different Google My Business addresses, and I have a beacon for each one. I don't know whether they were tracking me or they may be recording the conversation right now, but they actually sent me 3 Bluetooth beacons that I stuck right by the front door up on a bookshelf.
Those are pretty cool. One thing that reminded me of is there's a program called I'm part of it and I don't remember what it is, but anybody that wants to, Google gives points to the general public for reporting information as correct on Google Maps, whether that's taking pictures, adjusting the hours of operation, taking pictures of menus and restaurants or the front
I'm a
door.
Google guide.
Yeah, that's what it is, the Google Local Guide. And if you get up to a certain number of points by contributing reviews, saying something descriptive in your review, taking pictures, you can even take video of the venue and a whole bunch more other stuff. And if you do that, you rack up points, and Google will, if you're a high point getter, they'll give you a different gear and stuff like that. So Google is proactively trying to get more data into their maps through any means possible. So it isn't just businesses trying to get this thing updated. Anybody that's out there with a phone could be updating stuff about your business, which brings me to my next point, which is you got to stay on top of your business, Google My Business, because other people might be changing it. So you got to get in there and make sure you confirm and deny the different things that are true and untrue.
Okay. Yeah, I talked to a guy that somebody put his business as closed.
Okay.
They reported his business as closed, and it was a competitor.
That would be a black hat technique. Right?
Yeah, that's kind of ruthless, actually.
Yeah, right. And usually that's not hard to overturn if you go to Google and say, hey, I'm not really closed and I'm good here. But
now you're coming from Chicago, which is pretty competitive. What would you gauge Southwest Florida? We talked about this with some of the I Buy Houses websites that are out there. Mm-hmm. Where would you put Chicago on an SEO 1 to 10 competitiveness scale? And then where would you put Southwest Florida on a 1 to 10 competitiveness for SEO scale?
I would put like Chicago in the same category as like LA and New York at probably a 9 or a 10, especially in the city. I was competing in the northwest or the north suburbs on the Gold Coast, which was very competitive because that's where all the affluent people are, and all the service providers I worked with wanted to get ranked in that area. And I'd say that was more of a 7. This area down here, I would say you're at a 3. There's, in comparison, seeing the activity and how many folks that do the SEO services, there's just so much more going on. There's so much more in tune with what's going on Google versus down here. So that's a good thing for people down here because there's just so much opportunity to get in front of your competition.
I always thought I was some kind of SEO specialist back in the day, and I've just come to the conclusion that I was the one-eyed man in a room full of blind people for the most part. So, but the world's changed. I can tell you I have a lot of regrets. I did a lot of automated stuff, 8, 9, 10, 11. And had I put that time and that capital, and it worked, it got us business. But had I put that time and capital into content creation, white hat SEO, the websites would be even. I mean, at one point, I think the Southwest Florida REIA site had 1 million backlinks. Right. When I put the URL in quotation marks into Google, I was getting 1 million backlinks from that automated software. Most of it's gone now. And in hindsight, I should have spent those 4 years just dropping links, real links everywhere.
Right. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. That's what everybody was doing. You just got to, least amount of effort for maximum results. And everyone's trying to game the system to see what they can get to work and not work. And as Google is improving and, technology gets better and faster and whatever over time, they're able to better understand what's going on. Even, we talked about duplicate content very briefly at the last meeting. You don't want to plagiarize content and have it duplicated anywhere on the internet. Well, Google's getting better at actually looking at images to see, is this the same image? They initially started doing that through just reading the amount of kilobytes to see if it was the same, and some of the background tagging stuff behind the image that's more technical. But now they're actually able to, they have the AI that actually looks at the image itself to say, is this the same thing as another image? And if it is, they'll flag that as duplicate content. You're just reusing the same image again. So it's definitely getting smarter and more competitive. And, the one standby, to your point, that has always been true with SEO from the very beginning is content is king. If you put together something that is really relevant to your target audience, that delivers real value, and they really want to look at it, you're going to rise above the rest very easily.
We've got a blog that was like Housing Bubble 2018 ? I have spent a fair amount of money driving traffic to it, but it's also had an absolute ton of organic traffic and gets at least one organic search click a day from
Nice.
either Bing or Google. And in 9 months, it's at 24,000 page views.
Awesome.
Now, some of that's crawled traffic. It's not all people, but
Right.
That's pretty good, actually.
Right. And what's your time on page or bounce rate for both of those, or for those?
I haven't dug that deep into it.
So just to expound on that point for a minute, and these are all technical things, and I'll kind of lead into what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. But the bounce rate is the percentage of people that go on the page and then leave it without clicking through to another page on your site. So that's why I talked about call to action, or you put links to other pages so they kind of dive in. Google measures the metric of your bounce rate if the person digs in further into your website to determine the value of that particular page. If people are going to the page, they're spending a lot of time on it, they're clicking through to another page on your site, that means Google sees that, okay, this is delivering value to these people that are searching it, and therefore they move it up in the search engine. Time on page, if they're spending 4 minutes on the page, obviously you got some good infographics, you got some good content for people to read. So those are things to evaluate when you look at your Google Analytics, which is free to plug into your site to see what is happening on my pages, and then you can take more of a, like you'd like to say, 10,000 square foot view to see what's going on my pages, which ones are performing, which ones aren't, and how can I look at the ones that are performing and apply the same techniques to the ones that aren't performing.
Yeah, it's weird with content because stuff trends well that I did not like even. Mm-hmm. And then I've had and I'm a bit of a contrarian, so this is not abnormal for me. I've had stuff that I really, really like this content. Nothing. Nobody. I pretty much liked it, and I think my mom may have clicked on it a couple times. You know what I mean? But there's really not. There's no rhyme or reason with content, and I really think anymore it's just video. I think the world is becoming video.
There's a lot of activity in video, but I want to comment on the last thing you said. I have a story about a assisted living center, and you really got to get in the head of your target audience and what are they searching. And I had a pretty heated discussion with this client about how they didn't want to use the word nursing home, because we don't want to be referred to a nursing home because of the negative connotations that surround that term. And I said, well, that's what people search. I looked at the data. There's X thousands of people searching this term all the time. You can reframe that. You could say, on the page, assisted living center, the difference between assisted living and nursing home. You got to get the word in there, and you got to use it to be able to target that audience. If your audience is searching it, you got to customize your content around it and try and reframe it and direct things in the right direction. Moving on to video, one thing that we like to do is add video to all pages. So if people are coming to a page, I'm a 38-old on the edge of a Generation Xer, I would say. But I always prefer watching video on a page rather than reading. If I can just hit play, set it aside, and do something else while I'm listening to it, I'll do that over reading the article. But there's a lot of other people that prefer to read and don't want to watch the damn video. So
I read today, I was doing some research, and this guy was speaking of basically optimizing conversions, which is really optimizing sales.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt that putting and I'm going to start changing this up. Like I'm about to publish the foreclosure report as soon as we're done with this.
Mm-hmm.
And putting the video not at the top of the page is optimal. You actually want them to scan a little bit. And I also think from the kind of holistic Google SEO approach, it'll keep them on it keeps them on the page a hair longer.
Right. It does. Especially if they start to play the video. The thing with videos, you got to get to the point right away. A lot of people kind of get into the introductions, and then they have their intro clip and all that crap.
Yeah, your average Tim Ferriss podcast, if you forward to 6 minutes, that's when the podcast starts.
That's exactly what I do when I listen to it.
Sorry, Tim. I love you. I love the books. I love it all, but I pretty much minute 0 through 6. I don't know what he says. Joe Rogan's about 7 minutes now, if you listen to his podcast at all.
Okay. But one thing I wanted to mention going into kind of what I'm going to talk about tomorrow is I always like to talk about the technical and the human side of SEO. And I touched on that a little bit when we met the other day, the idea of do you have a phone number at the top of your website? I mean, the whole point of having a website is to get somebody to contact you, whether it's an email or phone call or whatever. So that's got to be easy. And it's unbelievable. I saw a whole bunch of people, my wife was saying, do we have our phone number at the top of the website? I mean, that's something that's super basic. It's just like having a business card at a network meeting. If you're going to a networking meeting without a business card, you got a problem. So you got to get the basics down. You want people to call you, put your number there, make it easy to find. And I'm going to talk about a lot of other basics like that so people can go back to their web developers and say, hey, these are some checklist items we got to get cleaned up right away.
Yeah, the click to call is huge. I mean, and it's gotta work to where they highlights the phone number, goes right into the. Because right now, I think 90% of my inbound traffic is mobile.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's basically on trend, and anything that's not commercial, say services, B2B services, anything that's business to consumer is essentially more mobile traffic than computer traffic. And so I watched a lot of my manufacturers that did B2B when we did SEO for them. Like I had this company that made these giant metal rollers for newspaper presses and stuff like that. They were 20% mobile and 80% desktop. Because if you think about it, these people are sitting at their desks looking at these very giant, expensive things that they're going to buy for their machinery. But all the B2C stuff is definitely trending toward mostly mobile. And to that point, one thing that I'll share at the meeting when we talk tomorrow is a website that allows you to check how fast your page loads. Because there is certainly an attention span situation where if your pages don't load quickly on mobile, they're just going to hit the back button and go to the next search result. So you got to make sure that those are loading quickly. And you think about, we're all used to the 4G speeds or connected to Wi-Fi, but sometimes you're getting in a 3G zone or the Wi-Fi sucks. And in those situations, your page is going to load slower. So these different tools are out there to tell you how fast is your page loading and what's slowing it down. So again, you can go back to your web developer to say, fix this stuff, please.
Yeah. Have you ever watched Silicon Valley on HBO?
I have not seen that one.
You should watch it. It's a really funny kind of tech show, and their whole product is they condense images.
Okay.
And so it's called Pied Piper. It sounds like we need to install Pied Piper on all of our pages. So. But I got a lot. I'm a lot more advanced than your average human with this stuff, and I got a lot. I actually really appreciate what you shared at the meeting. The interesting thing is that with SEO, I've really come to the conclusion of recent that really all Google is the most OCD thing on the planet. And they have this little way that they like it. And if you give it the little way that they like it, they don't give you grief and they reward you. It's kind of like having a very OCD parent. If you put the towel in the right place in the bathroom, well, you get rewarded. And that's really kind of all SEO is it's a little game. and you have to understand the rules of that game. And the hard part is, like, I find for writing SEO quality content is to get keywords in it without it sounding terrible.
Yeah, it's challenging to do that, but you're absolutely right. It's just playing by the rules of the game, and that's why most people go to the paid advertising versus the organic stuff, because it's frustrating to figure out all that stuff. I mean, you've been playing around in this world for 8 years, and you've figured out a lot of it. Most people, when they get started, or they're like, okay, I'm just going to put this bucket of money, and we're just going to pay for the pay-per-click. If you spend the time and money in the organic space and play by the rules of the game, there's just unbelievable return on investment in that area versus the ads. And it's not bad to do the ads, but you want to put your eggs in a couple baskets.
I think you got to do both. And I also can tell you, both platforms, that when I have an active ad account running and spending money on most major platforms, I somehow get a lot more organic clicks. I don't know whether that's a coincidence or random, but I can tell you, particularly in Google, if I have an active ad account running, I start getting more. I'm getting a ton of clicks from Bing lately. I mean, I've got one website that I'm getting 2 quality organic clicks from Bing a day. I had no idea Bing was still a thing. I mean, I really, I was on there thinking maybe, I don't know whether there's a backlash to Google, because everything in the world has become very adversarial, and it basically revolves around politics. And then, if someone feels something has a position on politics, well, then they start looking for something else. But I'm noticing a lot of clicks on Bing. I mean, and I really didn't even know Bing was there.
Yeah.
And
there's
then
certainly a number of outliers that are rebels to Google, and I think that's most of Bing's customer base currently.
Actually, I get a lot of clicks from DuckDuckGo too.
Okay, yeah, I remember them.
They're still there.
Yeah,
they're actually still out there. I get probably 5 clicks a month from DuckDuckGo on the REIA site, and then the real estate page is a couple here and there.
Right. Yeah, it's funny you say even though Google denies that if you use Google Ads that you'll get more organic traffic, that there's any relation between the two. There is speculation that if you use YouTube for your videos as opposed to, let's say, Vimeo, that because you're using one of their products, you'll get some additional SEO juice out of that. Although there's slightly more evidence out there from SEO people than there is with the ads, but that's something that people talk about.
Yeah, I've ranked, particularly when you could do the Google Live Hangouts. I would take a video and broadcast it as a Google Live Hangout, and it basically injected it into the SERP results. I mean, and YouTube has a live feature now too. And I think if you go live on YouTube, and if you're watching this, OBS Studio is free. It's an open source video broadcasting thing. That's what I use, is OBS. And then, like everything else on the planet, there's a YouTube video that'll teach you in 2 minutes exactly how to do it. I mean, YouTube is, they should just call it, do it yourself too.
Yes.
I mean, I just reprogrammed remotes for my truck that I ordered off Amazon off a YouTube video, sitting in it with my phone going over it. And it's amazing. But with OBS, you can go live on YouTube. And I'm very sure that is injected hard into the SERP results. And you can go live on YouTube from your phone on an app too. So, and there's a lot, like real estate, I'm finding more and more, it's all about the address, because, it's hard to rank for some stuff, because, people are now searching addresses and searching stuff like that. You got to forgive me. We got remodeling going on in the office. Can you hear the drill in the background?
But
can you hear it?
Yes, I do. But you're absolutely right. If you create video content around something, like for example, I'm looking at properties as well, and I search an address on Google, and you get a million links to all these different real estate websites like Zillow and Realtor.com and Trulia or whatever. But if you're the only one that creates a video with that address, Google's going to prioritize that and put it at the top. So
Zillow does that now. Zillow's automatically creating a spun video with the kind of like an Animoto type video.
Okay.
They're doing that. I do that automatically on anytime I launch a page, because I've got an IFTT link wheel that I bought an expired Tumblr with like a page 43 page rank.
Okay.
And then we wired that into a whole bunch of social media accounts. So when I post a YouTube video, it goes to that Tumblr, which actually ranks pretty well. even though there's nothing on there but YouTube videos. And
Right.
but it ranks in SEO pretty well, and then from there it fires off onto about 25 social media things.
Okay.
So which then gives a track back to the WordPress site, which all of that, you basically launch a new page and you've got about 35 backlinks quick.
Right.
On the social side. It would be better if we had more user interaction on them, but they're still there. I think even if they're weekly interacted links, they're doing better than the guy that doesn't have any links.
Right. Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But for agents, they especially real estate agents, real estate investors, Google tends to interject 2 to 3 videos into the first page of SERP results, almost always for an address. So if you don't have a couple walkthrough videos with your phone, and I mean, everybody picks on me. They call my videos, it's like the Blair Witch Project. It's all shaky. And I just bought a handheld gimbal to start using. But I have one of my clients, he said he would have to take Dramamine before he'd watch the videos of properties I would send him. But and we sold him 29 of them, so he didn't hate it too much.
Okay.
But if you don't have 2 or 3 videos with the address in it, and particularly a clickable link, that's another thing I see in real estate where everybody makes such a huge mistake, is that if you don't have a clickable link somehow in there, you basically just wasted an amazing opportunity, not only for traffic, but it's a backlink.
Absolutely. Another technical tip that's something that no one does, even in the more popular markets, is using something called schema markup. It's a markup language that goes behind the code of the page that basically tells all browsers and search engines this is consistently the same info. So, for example, on the name, address, and phone number of your business on your homepage, you can add some of the schema markup stuff next to it. Says, this text coming up is the street address. This text coming up is the phone number. But this can also be used for like Q&A purposes. So you could say, this is a question and this is an answer to this question up here. And if you ever Google something and you see like the little block that comes up before the first search result, or the thing that's on the right, it's called the infograph. Those 2 areas are populated by usage of the schema markup. So if you get savvy with using that schema markup, you can actually get above the ads, above the organic, and get even higher positioning. And that's something that even in the more savvy markets like Chicago, they're not really using that much. So
wow.
That's a neat technical thing. That takes a little bit more expertise to be able to execute well. But
I think we're outside of Jeff's toolbox at that point, I think. Well, Paul, I enjoyed talking to you. I enjoyed the last meeting. Really looking forward to the next meeting, and I sure appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, man.